Welcome to this RootsTech Connect demo entitled Getting the Most from FamilySearch Search. I'm Robert Kerr, Senior Product Manager at FamilySearch, and over the next 20 minutes, I hope to assist the person who's fairly new to the FamilySearch system to understand the kinds of data, the features and functions that'll have you up searching for records for your ancestors with the experts. I'd like to start our time together with a quick tour of the genealogical data that's available on FamilySearch, but first, let me tell you how to get to it. When you first come to FamilySearch and log in, you're going to be on a page like this called the Logged In homepage. And it's full of great activities that you can do, and you ought to explore that. But to get to the genealogical data, you're going to want to click Search up here in the header. It'll drop down a menu, and I'm going to choose Records for now, but we'll go over all the other types of data listed there. This brings you to the Historical Records search form, and notice that the other kinds of data are listed along the subheader here, and we're going to go talk about what each one of those means. In talking about the kind of genealogical data we have on the website, the very first one we have to talk about is historical records. These are documents that are usually created during the lifetime of your ancestor at their key life milestones like a birth, a marriage, a death, entry into the military, maybe even when they bought some land. And we leave these documents scattered around about our life, and for over 125 years, FamilySearch has been going out and working with civic organizations and governments and churches to photograph and gather in these documents. Here's an example of one. This is the 1940 US Census, and it's an image. We publish these images online. You can look at the image and you can see here's George Vincent and his wife Ora, his son Glenn and his daughter Rosalie, but you can see it, but these are really just pixels on an image, and so the computer can't really make use of that. So we have these absolute, marvelous, amazing human beings out there that dedicate their precious time for the good of humanity. They look at these images, they type in what they see. We call this, the technical word for it is indexing, but they transcribe what they see on the image and turn it into text. If you want to be one of these magnificent, amazing, marvelous human beings, come up to the top here. There's the word indexing. At some point you click on that. We'll guide you right in and show you how to do it, and you can become part of that a magnificent club making these records available for people to find their ancestors in. When those people are done transcribing what's on the image, FamilySearch then takes it and creates a document out of it. Here's George Vincent. You can scroll down. We have his wife Ora and Glenn and Rosalie, but look, these aren't just pixels on an image anymore. This is text. And we have genders and ages and locations of where they lived, etc. It's just fabulous. And this is what the computer can search. Now, this main page that we were looking at, this is where you go and search all of those documents that people have transcribed or indexed. And there's a couple different ways you can do that. On the left-hand side in this area is a search form. And you've seen search forms before, but this lets you go in and search all of the records that FamilySearch has indexed and are searchable. And there's billions of them from all over around the world, hundreds of countries. If you just want to search the records from a specific location, well, we have this map over here. And on the map, you can see the different regions of the world. As you mouse over different regions, they highlight, and if you click, it'll pop up. It'll tell you there's 33 countries or regions that are listed here, and you can click on one of those and it'll show you just the records. It'll let you search just the records from that country or area. If you want to search a specific collection, just one collection, you can come in here. It says find a collection, a specific one, and you can type in the name and it will start sorting it down. Or you can click on the word right below there that says browse all collections, and it'll take you to a page where you can see almost 3,000 different collections that are published at FamilySearch. It tells you the number of records that are in each collection. They're sorted by name. You can see whether there's images associated with it or just the text. And on this page you can filter too, because we got so many collections. So if you just wanted to see the ones from, say, British Columbia, you can click and we'll filter it down and you can see just the ones that you're interested in. So this is historical records or documents, and it represents only those records that are indexed and searchable by the computer. Because they're searchable by the computer, I can do something like this, where I type in George Vincent, and I can come down and say, let's look at his spouse. Her name was Aura, and we're going to do a search. It'll go through all of the billions of records, thousands of collections, and it'll find that George Vincent, whose wife is Aura. And we're going to come back, and I'm going to show you lots of tips and tricks about searching records, but let's do a really quick survey of the other kinds of data that's in the system. The next one is images, and it turns out that probably 70 to 80% of all the stuff that FamilySearch has acquired over the last 120 something years hasn't been indexed, and that's why we make that plea to have people come and help us get these records indexed, transcribed, so that they can be searchable and bring those ancestors to life off the records. But for those that aren't searchable, we have this tool which allows you to come in. You can type a location and you can access over 4.5 billion images here. In this case, I'm interested in maybe Mapleton, Utah. And I can click, I can see the image groups that are available there. There's one of them. It tells me how many images there are, 1,685. And if I click it, it'll bring me right into those images. They're organized in sets, and I can see what those sets are on the side. And I can scroll through the images. If there's a particular image that I want to look at, I can just click it and it'll load it. These are awesome. So don't be afraid of looking at these image sets. Most of your ancestors are actually found in that, and it's a tremendous resource. Let's go take a look at the next one, which is Family Tree. The Family Tree is searchable. Many of you are probably familiar with it, but what you really need to know about it is a community tree. It's a collaborative tree, wiki-like. Everybody has the ability to come in and make the data better. It's always evolving. And so this is the main place where you're going to document all of your genealogical conclusions. And for me, I can load the tree. It kind of looks like this. It'll start out with whoever my main person is. In my case, I chose my great-grandfather, Francis Bernard Allor, because that's the area where I typically start working. This tree has about 1.3 billion people in it from all around the world, going back hundreds and hundreds of years. It's one of the largest, most accurate, and fast-growing family trees online. The next kind of data is genealogies. It's important to note that what these are, they're also family trees. These are lineage linked or tree data that people have built on their computers over the years, and they come to us and say, I really don't want these trees to be lost. Can I submit my family's genealogy to you? And we would tell them, we'd love to have it. What you really should do is put it in Family Tree so everybody can enjoy it and see it and make it better. But sometimes they don't have time or the ability to do that, and we allow them to upload their genealogy to us. You can see there's a place to do that right down here below where it says submit your tree, and people can come and search, and there's billions of ancestors listed in these genealogies, and you can put in a name, like if I was looking for my great-grandfather, he was Francis Allor, and I do a search and it'll bring it up. I can see it. There's my great-grandmother Nellie or Ellen and my grandfather Howard. These are static though. People upload them. They're not changeable. It's not community. It's not collaborative. They don't evolve, but we preserve them and we allow people to search them and find clues from other people's research that they can then use to come out and build the family tree and make it better. The next kind of data is the catalog data. Let's go over to the FamilySearch Catalog. You're probably familiar with catalogs if you've ever been to a public library. You can go into a public library, they'll have computer terminals there. You can type in keywords and phrases or author names, and it will search all of the holdings of that library. It'll search the books and the magazines, the DVDs, everything that library has. In many cases, it will even search other libraries. That's the way you should think about the FamilySearch Catalog. It is a collection or a database of all of the holdings of FamilySearch. It's not a place where you come and type in Howard Allor and look for your grandfather, but it is a place where you might type in Pompano Beach, records, books, probate, and it will show you which collections you might find some of your grandfather's probate records in. We make all of our holdings, maps and books and gazetteers and everything FamilySearch has is in here, including all of those thousands of collections that are in the historical record. And we also link out to other catalogs catalogs. And so you can search WorldCat or the archived grid. And so if you find something here, we might have it in Salt Lake, but if you go to WorldCat, it might tell you, well, this title is available at all these other libraries, one of which might be nearer to you. Let's jump to the next one, which is books. One of the holdings FamilySearch has is books. It's a library. The Family History Library in Salt Lake City has 5 floors, and then we have hundreds or thousands of remote libraries scattered all around the world, and they have holdings on their shelves as well. And what we're doing is digitizing many of those books. Once those genealogical books are imaged and digitized, we construct ebooks out of them and we put them available up here. You can come in and search by author or title or topic or anything, and I'm going to do a quick search here for a book about Johanni Wolfgram. He was instrumental in Tonga. I find the book, I can view all 262 pages of that book. I can browse through the book just as if it was an ebook. It's a beautiful thing. Our goal is to get all of the key genealogical books that we have in the Family History Library and make those available online. It'll be through this books system. Really fabulous. The last kind of content in our little tour is the FamilySearch Wiki. You'll find it at the end of the subnav, and when you click it, it brings you into an environment that's very much like Wikipedia, except all of the content is focused on genealogy. Expert researchers, people such as yourselves, come in and do a brain dump of all their expertise of how to research in different collections, different locations, different time frames. And let me give you a quick example. My family comes from Baden, Germany. And if I type in Baden, I can choose one that looks, this Baden German Empire genealogy. It looks like a general purpose Baden one. And if I click search, it'll take me over to a page just loaded with information about everything there is to know about researching in Baden, Germany. I get a historical background, some getting started guides, various research tools. On the sidebar, look at all the links I have, how to read the records, major record types, some background, local resources. It's an amazing collection with maps and all kinds of information about how to find your family in Baden. And if you type in your hometown or an area where your family came from, you'll probably find similar things to what I have here in the wiki. Now what we're going to do, having toured the different kinds of content, the records, the images that are unindexed, the family tree as the ultimate destination for conclusions, the genealogies is a place where users store their genealogical trees that they don't want lost. The catalog, which is where FamilySearch publishes all of our content. And the books, where we're scanning genealogical books and putting them up as ebooks to help researchers. And then the Research Wiki, where people can store all of their expertise and knowledge for their own use and for the use of others. The next thing we're going to do, though, is we're going to go back to the records page. I want to show you some great tips on finding your ancestors in the records. Back on the historical records search page, the first thing we really need to talk about is strategy. FamilySearch offers 2 algorithmic ways to find records about your ancestor, the first being hinting and the second searching. Let's take just a moment and describe what hinting is. To do so, I'm going to go over to my great-grandfather Frank Bernard Allor here in the family tree. The hinting system is going to take into consideration his name, all the dates, places from his life. It's also going to look at all his one-hop relatives. It's going to look at Ellen, Isidore, his dad, Mary, his mom, and all his children, and all his siblings. It's going to look at all their names, dates, and places. And so by gathering up all the information about Frank, it's then going to build a cloud or a fingerprint of his life. And then it's going to go look in those billions of records and find the records for him. I noticed there's some hints right here on James Roland Keeley, and this is what hints will look like when the system finds them. And you can click and it'll tell you that there's an Indiana marriage the system found for James by looking at all of his data and all those people around him. Generally, hinting is going to find about 70 to 80% of the real records for your ancestor. And this will vary depending on your family names, the amount of records that FamilySearch has for a specific location, and the types of records. So with that said, let's go back to the search page and ask, then what is search for? If hinting finds 70 to 80% of the real records on average for an individual, search is meant for those people with a little more skill and expertise who want to dig in and try and find those remaining 20 to 30% of the records. So if hinting is like kicking back in a self-driving car and letting it get you from point A to point B, search is really kind of like sitting in the cockpit of a 747 where you have all the controls and the bells and whistles and try and find those remaining records. So with that said, let's talk strategy. We often have people come to FamilySearch and say, your system is no good. I put in info on my ancestor and it didn't find a thing. When we look at what they've done, they've come into the system and said, well, I know my ancestor. His name was Franklin Bernard Allor, and I know it wasn't anything else, so I'm going to check that box to be exact on both names. And I know where he was born. He was born in Mount Clemens, and there's no ambiguity. He was born in 1884. He married in 1909 in China Township, St. Clair, Michigan, and I know where he died. And there's no debate about that. I know exactly where he died. And I know his wife was Ellen, and his dad was Isidore, and his mom was Mary. And so I'm going to check the exact boxes. And when they do that, they click the search button and they get no results. Well, why did they get no results? Because the search system, the more data you put in, the fewer records it's going to find that match all that data. It's not like hinting, which builds that cloud of data and does a fingerprint. It's looking specifically at what you put in and trying to find records that match what you put in. So going back to the main search form, let's identify the first couple guidelines for using search. And the first is to really understand what its purpose is. Your goal is to use it to find those remaining 20 or 30% of the records that were not able to be brought forward by hinting. And why couldn't those records be found with hinting? It might be that the names, the dates, places that are on those records were either wrong in the record or badly misindexed. The other reason that the record might not have been brought forward is it may not have had enough information on it. Take, for instance, this military inscription record for Hugh Smith. There's no relationships on here whatsoever. There's very little information about him except a name and a place and an age, and the place might be completely wrong. He was inscripted in Butte, Montana, but he may have never been there or lived anywhere near there. He just went there to be inscripted, and so that place doesn't show up anywhere in his life. And because there's very little data and the place may not match anything else in his life, hinting might not have been able to bring this forward with any confidence that it was really about him. Now, the second rule of search is to always start with just a little bit of information. Start with the first name and last name. You can do the search with that and then incrementally add just a little bit more info as you need. I look at this search with just Frank Allor and I realize, well, I'm pulling up other Frank Allors, so maybe I need to just add a middle name and redo my search. And now I'm bringing forward a bunch more that are just him, even though I misspelled the name. Now, the third rule of search is to iterate. Let me give you an example here on iteration. When I searched for Frank Allor, it brought forward a tremendous number of records about my great-grandfather Frank. However, I noticed that it didn't bring back one that I expected. And if I iterate here and I just change the name to Frankie and do the search, here it is. Frankie B. Allor, son of Isidore. Well, it's spelled Ezidore. The system's pretty good. It knew that Frank and Franklin and Francis were all the same, but it didn't bring forward Frankie, and the father's name was misspelled. So by changing that, I was able to dig a little deeper. In the remaining minutes, I'm going to talk about just a couple of the key tools, bells, whistles that you need to know about as the essentials. And I recommend, if you want an in-depth coverage of all the different tools that are available in the search system, that you go to YouTube and type in Finding Elusive Records and look for a presentation I did a couple of years ago where I dive deep on the tools and search techniques. The first tool that I want to show you is filtering by collection. I noted that you should do a broad search, so I'm just putting in Frank Allor, and I'm going to go ahead and do that search. When I look at the records that come back, I see that there's 4,421 records, and that's quite a bit. I don't know that I really want to look through all of those records. Even showing them at 100 results per page means that's a lot of pages to look through. There's a tool at the top that lets me see the collection that those 4,421 records are in, and if I click that, it shows me, the birth, marriage, death, the census and lists, and they're coming from all over the place. I have some from England and Germany and California and Italy. I know my great-grandfather lived his life in Michigan. The next tool that I'd like to show you will help me get rid of all of those records that are almost certainly not about my great-grandfather. And if you scroll down on the search form, this is present on the main form as well, you'll see restrict records by location. If you click that, you can type in the name of a country. In my case, it's going to be United States, and then I'm presented with the subjurisdiction, and that's going to be Michigan. So we'll select that, and then I'm going to update this search. And what's going to happen is it's going to get rid of all of those records where the jurisdiction of the record is not Michigan. And you can see it drop down significantly. If I go back to records now, I see that I'm down to 203 records rather than 4,000. Powerful tool. Now let's say I also wanted to restrict it by type. It's pretty easy for me to do that. I can come in and say I'm really only interested in records that are census records, for instance, or birth records. If I click the census and lists, and then I update my search, it's going to get rid of everything that isn't a census record. Now I'm down to 87 records about Frank Allor, all from Michigan and all census. Very powerful tools, filtering by location and by type. Moving back to the main search form, the next thing I'd like to show you is not so much a tool as a technique. It's not uncommon to want to find all of the children of a couple. And in this case, I'd like to go find all of the children of my grandfather, John Peter Kerr, and his wife, Marie. They had 5 sons, John, Edward, James, William, and Raymond. Now, what I've done is I've left the first name and last name fields of the deceased ancestor empty. You don't need to put anything in there. But down below, I clicked on Father and Mother under Search with a Relationship, and I put in John Kerr and Marie. Notice that I also restricted it by location, like we showed a second ago, to Michigan, which is where I knew that family spent most of their lives. When I do the search, it brings back all of the records. I have Raymond, William, Edward, John, and James. Those are the 5 sons. I have 2 last essential things to show you. The first will restrict your search results even further if you feel like you're getting too much junk. And then the last one will allow you to expand your search results if you think you're just not picking up all the records that you ought to be. Let's take a look at this search I just did where I found the 5 boys of John and Marie. If you'll notice down lower, I'm picking up a bunch of other records where the last name is spelled all kinds of different ways. One of the things you can do, and I'm going to come back up here, where it says John Kerr, I'm going to tell it that I only want to match the father's name exactly. And if I click that and then update my search, it's going to get rid of all of the last names that are not spelled exactly the way I chose it to be spelled, K-E-H-R-E-R, and it brings my search results down significantly. You'll want to use that exact tool very carefully though, because often things do get misindexed and names get changed, and so if you use it, you may end up missing records that are real records about your ancestor. Okay, the last tip that I have for you is the use of wildcards to expand the variability in your search results, and to do that I'm going to use this gentleman, Timothy Sullen Speaks. He was born in 1847, married to Orleana Virginia Powell, and I'd like to go find all of the census records for Timothy. Coming back over to the search form, I've typed in Timothy Sullen Speaks, which is his name. I've added a couple years on either side of his birth year of 1847 because I know that birth years in census records are often wrong. I use some of the tools that we've talked about already. I'm restricting it to the United States and I'm saying show me just the census record. And when I do that search, I come up and I can see that I have Timothy here in the 1850 census, the 1860, the 1870, the 1880, 1910, 1920, but I'm missing the 1900 census. Going back up to the collections, I can click on 1900 and say show me just those results from the 1900 census, and none of these are my guy. So what do? Coming back to the main search form, I'm going to enter in some wildcards into his last name under the assumption that maybe it got misindexed. The most useful wildcard is the star character on your keyboard. You'll find that as a shift up above the number 8. And wherever you insert that, it will replace one or more ambiguous characters. So I put one in right after the S, and I'm going to enter in a second one just to show you that you can actually do a search with multiple of those. And when I conduct that search, it brings me back and I can see that I have this interesting record here. It's from Virginia. It says Timothy Sipolak, but notice the spouse down here is Orleana V. So that's quite interesting. When I click on that and look at the image, I can see Timothy and Orleana, and notice this last name is quite the mess. I can see an S in there. What looks like an F and an O is actually a P. How do I know that? Well, if you look up at the word stepson up here in this other record, you can see that the census taker writes his P's with a detached circle. So I have an S, I have a P, there's an E in here, and an A, and that's really the last name Speak, even though it totally looks like Sipalak. Doing a search, entering in some wildcard characters, I was able to find a record that was badly misindexed because the record itself was a mess. To summarize, we've taken a quick tour of the search system and the different kinds of data available for searching at FamilySearch. We've talked about a number of different tools such as exact searching, wildcard searching, filtering by collection, restricting record results to a specific location or type, as well as some simple techniques such as to find the children of a couple. I hope the last few minutes will help you get up to speed and get some productive searching done quickly on FamilySearch, and as always, I wish you the best of luck in all your genealogical efforts.